Maya Rodriguez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent their afternoons shopping at the mall or gossiping about boys, she found herself drawn to action movies and martial arts documentaries. Her bedroom walls were covered with posters of Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Ronda Rousey instead of pop stars and heartthrobs. At 17, Maya was petite at 5 feet 2 inches and weighed barely 110 pounds. Her delicate features and quiet demeanor made most people assume she was fragile, someone who needed protection rather than someone capable of protecting others. This assumption would follow her everywhere she went, creating a constant source of frustration that burned quietly in her chest. The idea first came to her during a particularly boring history class. Mrs. Henderson was droning on about World War II when Maya's attention drifted to the window. Outside, she could see the local martial arts academy across the street from the high school. Students in white uniforms moved through their forms with precision and grace, their movements flowing like water yet sharp as lightning. That evening at dinner, Maya brought up the subject with her parents. Her father, a mechanic with calloused hands and a gentle heart, nearly choked on his mashed potatoes when she mentioned wanting to learn martial arts. Her mother, a nurse who had seen too many injuries in her career, immediately launched into a lecture about the dangers of contact sports. "Mia, you're built like a bird," her father said, using his pet name for her. "One wrong move and you could get seriously hurt. Why don't you try something safer, like dance or art class?" Her mother nodded vigorously in agreement. "Your father's right, sweetheart. You have such beautiful hands. It would be a shame to see them bruised and swollen from fighting." But Maya had made up her mind. She had been researching martial arts for months, watching videos online and reading about different fighting styles. She knew this was something she needed to do, something that called to her on a level she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't about wanting to hurt people or prove how tough she was. It was about discovering what she was truly capable of. The next day after school, Maya walked across the street to Dragon's Den Martial Arts Academy. The building was older, with weathered brick walls and a simple sign that had seen better days. Through the large windows, she could see students practicing, their movements creating a rhythmic symphony of discipline and focus. Master Chen, a 60-year-old Chinese immigrant who had opened the school 15 years earlier, greeted her at the door. His eyes were kind but sharp, the kind that seemed to see everything at once. He listened patiently as Maya explained her interest in learning martial arts, nodding occasionally but saying nothing until she finished speaking. "You are very small," he said finally, his accent making the words sound more like an observation than a criticism. "In my country we have saying, the bamboo that bends in the storm survives while the mighty oak breaks. Sometimes small can be advantage." Maya felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Finally, someone who didn't immediately dismiss her because of her size. Master Chen explained the different programs available, from basic self-defense to competitive martial arts training. He suggested she start with a beginner's class to see if she truly enjoyed the discipline and commitment required. The first class was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening. Maya spent the weekend in a state of nervous excitement, practicing basic stances she had learned from YouTube videos, and imagining herself moving with the same fluid grace she had witnessed through the academy windows. When Tuesday arrived, Maya changed into the simple white uniform Master Chen had provided and entered the main training area. The room smelled of sweat and determination, with mirrors covering one wall and various training equipment scattered around the space. She was surprised to find herself in a class of mostly adults, ranging from college students to middle-aged professionals looking to get in shape. Her classmates were polite but clearly skeptical. She could see it in their eyes, the same look she had grown accustomed to throughout her life. They saw a small, quiet girl who looked like she belonged in a library rather than a dojo. Some of the men seemed particularly amused, exchanging glances and barely suppressed smiles when they thought she wasn't looking. The instructor for the beginner's class was Jake Morrison, a 28-year-old black belt who had been training under Master Chen for over a decade. Jake was everything Maya was not: tall, muscular, confident, and intimidating. His presence filled the room, and when he spoke, everyone listened intently. "Welcome to Dragon's Den," Jake announced, his voice carrying easily across the training area. "Some of you are here to learn self-defense, others want to get in shape, and a few might even have dreams of competition. Whatever brought you here, understand this: Martial arts is not just about physical technique. It's about mental discipline, respect, and understanding your own limitations. His eyes lingered on Maya for a moment longer than the others, and she felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly, refusing to look away first. The class began with basic warm-up exercises, jumping jacks, push-ups, and stretching routines. Maya kept pace with the others, her smaller size actually working to her advantage during the flexibility portions. She noticed Jake watching her form, occasionally nodding with what might have been approval. As they moved into basic stances and punching techniques, Maya felt something click into place. The movements felt natural, almost familiar, as if her body had been waiting her entire life to learn this language of controlled power and precise motion. But it was during the partner exercises that the real skepticism began to show. When Jake announced they would practice basic blocking techniques with partners, Maya was paired with Tom, a stocky construction worker who looked like he could bench press her entire body weight. "Take it easy on me, little lady," Tom said with a patronizing smile. "I don't want to accidentally hurt you." Maya bit back her response and focused on the technique Jake was demonstrating. As they began the exercise, she could feel the eyes of the entire class on her, waiting for her to fail, to prove that she didn't belong in this world of strength and combat. The session ended with everyone bowing respectfully to Jake and Master Chen. As the students began to file out, Maya lingered, hoping for some feedback or encouragement. Jake approached her, his expression unreadable. "You did well for your first day," he said simply, "but this is just the beginning. The real test comes when things get difficult." Maya nodded, understanding that his words carried more weight than simple encouragement. She was being warned that her journey would be challenging, that her size and gender would make every step harder than it needed to be. As she walked home that evening, Maya felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration coursing through her body. Her muscles ached in ways she had never experienced, but her spirit felt more alive than it had in years. She knew she had found her path, even if that path would be steeper and more treacherous than anyone else believed she could handle. 3 months into her training, Maya had established a routine that revolved entirely around martial arts. She attended classes 4 times a week, practiced forms in her backyard every morning before school, and spent her lunch breaks researching techniques and watching instructional videos on her phone. Her grades remained excellent, but her social life had become virtually non-existent. Her transformation wasn't immediately visible to the casual observer. She was still the same quiet girl who sat in the back of most classes, still petite and soft-spoken. But there were subtle changes that those who knew her well began to notice. Her posture had improved dramatically, her movements had become more deliberate and controlled, and there was a new confidence in the way she carried herself. At home, her parents watched this evolution with mixed feelings. They were proud of her dedication and discipline, but concerned about her increasing isolation from her peers. Her mother often suggested she invite friends over or go to school dances, not understanding that Maya had found something more important to her than typical teenage social activities. "You're becoming obsessed," her older brother Carlos told her one evening as she practiced kicks in the garage. He was home from college for the weekend and had been watching her train for over an hour. "This isn't normal behavior for a 17-year-old girl." Maya paused in her routine, sweat beading on her forehead. "What's normal?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Spending hours gossiping about who's dating whom, obsessing over makeup tutorials and fashion trends? This makes me feel alive, Carlos. It makes me feel like myself." Carlos shook his head but couldn't argue with the passion in her voice. He had never seen his little sister so focused on anything before, and despite his concerns, he had to admit that she seemed happier and more confident than she had ever been. At Dragon's Den, Maya's progress was becoming impossible to ignore. Master Chen had moved her up to the intermediate class ahead of schedule, recognizing that her natural aptitude and tireless work ethic had accelerated her learning beyond what anyone had expected. She was now training alongside students who had been practicing for over a year, and she was keeping pace with most of them. The intermediate class was taught primarily by Jake Morrison, with Master Chen observing and occasionally stepping in to correct techniques or provide philosophical insights. Jake had initially been skeptical of Maya's rapid advancement, suspecting that Master Chen was being too generous with his newest student. However, as he watched her spar and demonstrate techniques, his skepticism began to give way to grudging respect. Maya's sparring partners were no longer taking it easy on her. Word had spread throughout the academy that the small girl was tougher than she looked, and the other students had begun treating her as a legitimate training partner, rather than someone who needed to be protected. This shift in attitude brought both opportunities and challenges. During one particularly intense sparring session, Maya was matched against Derek, a college football player who stood 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. The size difference was so dramatic that several students stopped their own training to watch, expecting to see Maya overwhelmed by her much larger opponent. Jake set the parameters: light contact, 3 2-minute rounds, focus on technique rather than power. As he called for them to begin, Derek moved forward with the confidence of someone who had never lost a physical confrontation in his life. Maya's approach was completely different. She moved like water, flowing around Derek's attacks rather than meeting them head-on. When he threw powerful punches, she wasn't there to receive them. When he attempted to use his size advantage to crowd her against the wall, she slipped away at the last second, leaving him grasping at empty air. By the end of the first round, Derek was breathing heavily while Maya looked like she was just warming up. The watching students began to murmur among themselves, surprised by what they were witnessing. This wasn't the outcome anyone had expected. The second round saw Derek become more aggressive, frustrated by his inability to land clean techniques on his smaller opponent. He began to abandon the technical approach Jake had emphasized, relying instead on brute force and intimidation. This played directly into Maya's strengths. As Derek charged forward with a wild haymaker punch, Maya stepped to the side and swept his leading leg. The much larger man crashed to the mat with a thud that echoed throughout the training area. The room fell completely silent except for Derek's heavy breathing and the sound of Maya bouncing lightly on the balls of her feet. Jake called a halt to the sparring session, officially ending it as a draw, but everyone present knew what they had witnessed. The small girl who had walked into the academy 6 months ago as a complete beginner had just outclassed one of the strongest students in the school. After class, as Maya was collecting her gear, Jake approached her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. It wasn't the patronizing patience he had shown her in the beginning, or even the grudging respect he had developed over the past few months. This was something closer to genuine interest. "You've been holding back," he said, making it a statement rather than a question. Maya looked up at him, considering her response carefully. "I've been learning," she said finally. "There's a difference between fighting and proving you can fight." Jake nodded slowly, understanding the wisdom in her words despite her age and relative inexperience. "Master Chen wants to see you after class tomorrow. He's been watching your progress, and I think he has something to discuss with you." That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what Master Chen wanted to talk about. She had heard rumors about advanced training programs and competition teams, but she had never dared to imagine herself as part of such elite groups. The possibility both excited and terrified her. The next evening, after the regular class had ended and the other students had gone home, Maya found herself alone in the training area with Master Chen. The elderly instructor moved through a complex form with liquid grace, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next. When he finished, he turned to her with those sharp, knowing eyes. "You have gift," he said simply. "Not just physical gift, though you have that too. You have warrior's heart. You understand that true strength comes from discipline, not anger, from wisdom, not violence." Maya felt her heart racing as she waited for him to continue. "I want to offer you opportunity," Master Chen said. "There is tournament in 6 months. State championship for under-18 division. Very competitive, very difficult. Students train for years before they are ready for such competition." He paused, studying her face for her reaction. "I believe you could be ready, but training would be different. More intense, more demanding. You would need to train 6 days per week, sometimes twice per day. Your body and your spirit would be tested in ways you cannot imagine." Maya didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said immediately. "I want to do it." Master Chen smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had seen from him since she began training. "Good, we start Monday. Jake will be your primary instructor, but I will oversee your preparation personally. You will learn that there is difference between knowing martial arts and becoming martial artist." As Maya walked home that night, she felt as if her entire world had shifted on its axis. 6 months ago, she had been just another quiet teenager with a secret dream. Now she was being prepared for state-level competition by one of the most respected martial arts instructors in Texas. She knew the challenges ahead would test every ounce of determination she possessed. She knew there would be moments when her body would want to quit, when the training would seem impossible, when the doubt and skepticism of others would threaten to overwhelm her confidence. But she also knew she had found her calling. This wasn't just about learning to fight or winning trophies. This was about discovering who she really was beneath all the assumptions and limitations that others had placed on her. This was about proving to herself that size and strength were just numbers, and that the human spirit could overcome any physical disadvantage through dedication, intelligence, and unshakable determination. The real training was about to begin. The tournament training regimen that Master Chen and Jake designed for Maya was unlike anything she had experienced before. Her days now began at 5 in the morning with an hour of conditioning exercises, endless sets of push-ups, sit-ups, and burpees that left her muscles screaming and her lungs burning. After school, she would return to the academy for 2 hours of technical training, focusing on perfecting her forms and drilling specific combinations until they became second nature. Within 2 weeks of beginning this intensive program, Maya's body began to change in ways that surprised everyone, including herself. Her arms developed lean muscle definition, her core became solid as granite, and her legs gained explosive power that allowed her to generate devastating kicks despite her small frame. More importantly, her mind had adapted to function under extreme physical stress, maintaining clarity and focus even when her body wanted to collapse from exhaustion. Jake had initially worried that the demanding schedule would burn out his young student, but Maya's response to the increased pressure exceeded all his expectations. She never complained, never asked for easier training, and never missed a session. If anything, she seemed to thrive on the challenge, arriving at each workout with an intensity that impressed even the most seasoned fighters at the academy. "I've trained professional fighters who didn't have her work ethic," Jake confided to Master Chen after watching Maya complete a particularly brutal conditioning session without showing any signs of wanting to quit. "She's becoming something special." Master Chen nodded knowingly. "The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. She has the spirit of a true warrior." As word of Maya's tournament preparation spread throughout the local martial arts community, she began attracting attention from unexpected sources. Other instructors would stop by the academy to watch her train, curious to see the small girl who was supposedly being prepared for state-level competition after less than a year of training. Some came with genuine interest, others with obvious skepticism. One evening, a group of black belts from a competing school arrived during Maya's training session. They had heard rumors about Master Chen's secret weapon and wanted to see for themselves whether the stories were true or just typical academy hype. The lead instructor was a man named Rick Sullivan, who operated Thunder Martial Arts across town. Sullivan had a reputation for producing tough, aggressive fighters who relied primarily on power and intimidation. His students were known for their physical conditioning and their willingness to push the boundaries of what was considered appropriate contact during sparring. "So this is the little girl everyone's talking about," Sullivan said loud enough for half the academy to hear. His tone carried a mixture of amusement and condescension that immediately put Maya on edge. Master Chen stepped forward, his expression polite but guarded. "Rick, welcome to Dragon's Den. You are here to observe or to train." Sullivan gestured toward Maya, who was working on a speed bag in the corner. "I heard you've got this kid entered in the state championship. Seems a little dangerous, don't you think? That tournament is for serious fighters, not children playing dress-up." The conversation was loud enough that Jake heard it from across the room. He abandoned the student he was working with and moved toward the group, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. Maya continued hitting the speed bag, but her rhythm had become more aggressive, each strike landing with sharp precision. "Maya has earned her place in the tournament," Jake said evenly. "Her record speaks for itself," Sullivan laughed. "What record? Has she fought anyone who wasn't taking it easy on her because she's a little girl? I've got a student who's her age and weight class. Why don't we see how she does against real competition?" Master Chen's eyes narrowed. He understood that this was more than casual curiosity. Sullivan was challenging the reputation of his academy and questioning his judgment as an instructor. In the traditional martial arts community, Such challenges couldn't be ignored without losing face. If Maya agrees, Master Chen said carefully, we could arrange a controlled sparring match. Full protective gear, tournament rules, neutral referees. Maya had stopped hitting the bag and was listening intently to the conversation. When Master Chen looked in her direction with a questioning expression, she nodded once, firmly. Good, Sullivan said, his smile revealing that this was exactly what he had hoped for. My student Tommy Chen can be here Saturday afternoon. This should be educational for everyone involved. After Sullivan and his entourage left, Jake pulled Maya aside. His expression was serious, almost worried. You don't have to do this, he told her. Sullivan is trying to make a point, and he's using you to do it. Tommy Chen is good. Really good. He's been training for 4 years and has already won several regional tournaments. Maya met his gaze steadily. Will this help prepare me for state championships? Jake considered the question. Probably. Competition experience is valuable, and Tommy fights with a style that's completely different from what you're used to. But there's a risk involved. If you lose badly, it could damage your confidence before the big tournament. And if I win, Jake's expression softened slightly. If you win, it will send a message throughout the state that Maya Rodriguez is someone to be taken seriously. Saturday arrived with an unusual crowd at Dragon's Den. Word had spread throughout the local martial arts community about the upcoming match, and instructors and students from several schools had come to watch. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and tension. Tommy Chen arrived with Sullivan and several teammates. He was Maya's age, but carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. At 5 feet 6 inches and 130 pounds, he had a significant size and reach advantage over Maya. His movements were sharp and aggressive, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a fighter who is used to dominating his opponents. The rules were established. 3 3-minute rounds, full contact but controlled, victory by knockout, submission, or judge's decision. 2 neutral black belts would serve as referees, and both Master Chen and Sullivan would be present as cornermen for their respective students. As Maya put on her protective gear, she felt strangely calm. The nervousness and anxiety she had expected were replaced by a focused intensity that seemed to slow down time around her. She could hear every conversation in the room, feel every pair of eyes watching her, but none of it mattered. There was only the upcoming fight and the opponent she needed to defeat. When the referee called for the fighters to approach the center of the mat, Maya looked directly into Tommy's eyes for the first time. What she saw there was exactly what she had expected, the assumption that this would be an easy victory, that his size and experience would overwhelm her within minutes. The referee explained the rules one final time, checked both fighters' protective gear, and called for them to bow to each other. As they touched gloves, Tommy leaned forward slightly. Try not to get hurt too badly, he whispered, loud enough for Maya to hear but quiet enough that the referees missed it. Maya said nothing in response. She simply smiled. The bell rang to begin the first round, and Tommy immediately moved forward with aggressive combinations, trying to establish his dominance early. His strategy was obvious. Use his size and reach to keep Maya on the defensive, wear her down with constant pressure, and finish the fight as quickly as possible. For the first minute, his plan seemed to be working. Maya was forced to retreat, dodging and blocking his attacks while looking for openings to counter. The watching crowd murmured their approval of Tommy's performance, with several people nodding, as if this outcome had been predictable from the beginning. But Maya was learning. With each exchange, she was cataloging Tommy's habits, timing his combinations, and identifying the small gaps in his defense that her speed and precision could exploit. She was fighting a chess match while he was throwing haymakers. Halfway through the first round, Maya found her opening. Tommy threw a powerful right cross that left him momentarily off balance. Instead of retreating as she had been doing, Maya stepped inside his guard and delivered a lightning-fast combination to his ribs and solar plexus. Tommy's expression changed from confidence to surprise to concern in the span of 3 seconds. For the first time in the fight, he was the one backing away, reassessing his opponent with new respect. The round ended with honors relatively even, but the dynamic had shifted completely. Everyone present understood that they weren't watching a mismatch. They were watching a real fight between 2 skilled competitors, and the outcome was no longer a foregone conclusion. The second round began with a completely different energy than the first. Tommy's initial overconfidence had evaporated, replaced by the focused intensity of a fighter who recognized he was in a real battle. Sullivan could be heard shouting instructions from the sideline, urging his student to use his size advantage more effectively and not let the smaller fighter dictate the pace. Maya came out of her corner with a new sense of purpose. The first round had been about survival and assessment. Now she understood her opponent's strengths and weaknesses, his timing and his tendencies. More importantly, she had seen the doubt creep into his eyes when her combinations landed cleanly on his body. The psychological warfare began almost immediately. Instead of the defensive posture she had adopted in the first round, Maya became the aggressor, moving forward with combinations that forced Tommy to retreat. Her footwork was exceptional, allowing her to be in position to attack while staying just out of range of his counterstrikes. 30 seconds into the round, Maya executed a technique that drew gasps from the experienced martial artist watching. As Tommy threw a front kick aimed at her midsection, she caught his foot, swept his supporting leg, and used his own momentum to send him crashing to the mat. The takedown was so smooth and effortless that it looked like it had been choreographed. Tommy scrambled back to his feet quickly, but the damage to his confidence was evident. He had been taken down by a girl who weighed 20 pounds less than him, and he had done it with a technique that made his own attack look clumsy and predictable. The remainder of the second round belonged entirely to Maya. She had found her rhythm and her range, and everything she had learned during months of intensive training began to flow together in perfect harmony. Her strikes were crisp and accurate, her defense was nearly impenetrable, and her movement was so fluid that she seemed to be dancing around her increasingly frustrated opponent. When the bell rang to end the second round, the crowd's reaction was noticeably different. The murmurs of surprise had been replaced by genuine appreciation for the technical skill they were witnessing. Several experienced fighters were nodding in approval, recognizing that they were seeing something special. In her corner, Master Chen offered Maya water and simple advice. Fight your fight. Don't think about winning or losing. Think only about perfect technique. Jake was more practical in his counsel. He's getting frustrated, which means he's going to try something desperate in the third round. Stay calm, stay technical, and let him make the mistakes. Across the mat, Sullivan was having a very different conversation with Tommy. His voice was urgent, almost angry. You're letting her make you look like an amateur. She's half your size. Use your reach, use your strength, and finish this fight. The third round began with Tommy attempting to implement his instructor's advice. He came out aggressively, throwing powerful combinations and trying to use his size to crowd Maya against the wall. For a moment it seemed like his strategy might work as Maya was forced to focus entirely on defense. But Maya's conditioning was superior, and her technique remained sharp even under pressure. As Tommy began to tire from throwing hard punches that weren't landing cleanly, Maya began to see larger and larger openings in his defense. The end came suddenly and decisively. Tommy, frustrated by his inability to land a fight-ending technique, dropped his hand slightly after throwing a combination. Maya stepped forward and launched a picture-perfect spinning heel kick that caught him squarely in the solar plexus. Tommy folded over like he had been shot, the air rushing out of his lungs in an audible gasp. He dropped to his knees, struggling to breathe, while Maya stepped back with her hands raised to show the referees that she wasn't going to follow up on her downed opponent. The referee began counting, but it was clear that Tommy wouldn't be able to continue. At the count of 8, Sullivan threw in the towel, officially ending the fight by technical knockout. The silence that followed was profound. Nobody in the room had expected this outcome, least of all Rick Sullivan, whose face had gone pale as he watched his prized student helped to his feet by the medical personnel who were standing by. Maya removed her protective headgear and bowed respectfully toward Tommy, who was still struggling to catch his breath but managed to nod back in acknowledgement of her victory. There was no celebration from Maya, no showboating or taunting. She had simply done what she came to do and was ready to move on. Master Chen entered the center of the mat and raised Maya's hand, formally declaring her the winner. The crowd erupted in applause, with even Sullivan's students clapping in appreciation of what they had witnessed. As people began to file out of the academy, many stopped to congratulate Maya and ask about her training regimen. Word was already spreading that this unknown 17-year-old girl had just defeated one of the region's top junior fighters. and speculation was beginning about what she might accomplish at the state championship. But it was Sullivan's reaction that made the biggest impression on Maya. As he was leaving with his defeated student, he stopped and approached her directly. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice lacking any of the condescension it had carried earlier. "I underestimated you, and that was my mistake. You're a hell of a fighter, kid. Your instructor should be proud." Maya accepted the apology graciously, understanding that it took courage for Sullivan to admit he had been wrong in front of so many of his peers. After everyone had left, Maya found herself alone in the training area with Master Chen and Jake. The adrenaline was beginning to wear off, and she was starting to feel the physical impact of the fight in her tired muscles and slightly sore ribs. "How do you feel?" Jake asked, studying her face for signs of how the victory had affected her mentally. Maya considered the question carefully. "I feel like I proved something to myself," she said finally. "But I also feel like this was just the beginning. Tommy was good, but the fighters at state championship will be better." Master Chen smiled at her response. "Wisdom beyond your years. Victory can be more dangerous than defeat if it makes you overconfident. But I think you understand that true strength comes from constant improvement, not from past accomplishments." That night, Maya lay in bed replaying the fight in her mind. She had won convincingly, but she was already analyzing what she could have done better, what techniques had worked most effectively, and what adjustments she would need to make for future opponents. The victory over Tommy had accomplished more than just proving her skill level. It had announced to the martial arts community that Maya Rodriguez was not someone to be underestimated. The small girl who had walked into Dragon's Den less than a year ago was now being recognized as a legitimate contender. But Maya understood that this recognition came with new pressures and expectations. People would now be watching her more closely, studying her techniques and preparing specifically to defeat her. The element of surprise that had been her advantage was now gone. The state championship was still 4 months away, and Maya knew that those 4 months would be the most challenging of her life. Every opponent from now on would know exactly who she was and what she was capable of. They would come into every fight prepared to face the girl who had knocked out Tommy Chen. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. She had proven she belonged in the ring with serious competitors. Now she needed to prove she could win when everyone expected her to win, when the pressure was at its highest, and when a single mistake could end her dreams of becoming a state champion. The real test was still ahead of her. The months following Maya's victory over Tommy Chen brought unexpected changes to her life. Word of her performance had spread throughout the Texas martial arts community, and she began receiving invitations to train with other academies and compete in regional tournaments. More importantly, college recruiters who had never heard of Dragon's Den were now making inquiries about the small girl who was making such a big impression. Maya's parents struggled to adjust to their daughter's newfound recognition. Her father attended every training session he could, still marveling at the transformation he had witnessed in his quiet little girl. Her mother had overcome her initial fears about the dangers of martial arts, recognizing that this pursuit had given Maya a confidence and purpose that extended far beyond the training mat. "I don't pretend to understand it," her mother told her sister during one of their weekly phone calls. "But I've never seen her so focused and happy. She's found something that makes her feel complete." The training regimen that Master Chen and Jake had designed became even more intensive as the state championship approached. Maya was now sparring regularly with black belts from other schools, each bringing different styles and strategies that forced her to constantly adapt and improve her techniques. One particularly challenging training partner was brought in from Houston, a woman named Lisa Park, who had been competing at the national level for over 5 years. Lisa was in her mid-20s, stood 5 feet 4 inches, and had the lean, dangerous build of a professional fighter. She had agreed to help with Maya's preparation after seeing video of the Tommy Chen fight. "You've got natural ability," Lisa told Maya after their first sparring session, "but you're still fighting like someone who's been training for less than a year. At the state level, that won't be enough." Lisa's training methods were brutal and unforgiving. She pushed Maya harder than anyone ever had, forcing her to fight through exhaustion, pain, and moments when her technique began to break down under pressure. More importantly, she taught Maya the mental aspects of competition that couldn't be learned from technique drills or conditioning exercises. Fighting isn't just about who has better kicks or faster hands, Lisa explained during a break between rounds. It's about who can maintain their composure when everything goes wrong, who can adapt when their game plan fails, and who can dig deeper when their body wants to quit. Under Lisa's guidance, Maya began to develop what experienced fighters call ring IQ, the ability to read opponents quickly, adjust tactics mid-fight, and exploit weaknesses that only become apparent under the pressure of actual competition. She learned to recognize when an opponent was hurt, when they were tired, and when they were mentally defeated even if their body was still fighting. The first major test of this new level of training came at a regional tournament in Dallas, where Maya faced her toughest competition yet. The draw included several nationally ranked junior fighters, and Maya was seeded fourth despite her growing reputation. Her first opponent was a girl from Oklahoma named Sarah Mitchell, who had won 3 consecutive regional championships and was considered by many to be the favorite to win the entire tournament. Sarah was technically sound, physically strong, and had never lost a fight in her weight class. The fight began exactly as Maya had expected. Sarah came out with textbook technique and conservative strategy, content to win rounds with clean, safe techniques rather than taking risks for a spectacular finish. She was clearly fighting not to lose rather than fighting to win, which gave Maya the opening she needed. Maya's approach was completely different. She fought with the aggression and creativity that had become her trademark, mixing traditional techniques with unorthodox combinations that caught Sarah off guard. By the end of the first round, Sarah's corner was already making adjustments. Recognizing that their fighter was in a much tougher contest than they had anticipated, the second round saw Maya take control of the fight completely. Her conditioning advantage became apparent as Sarah began to slow down, while Maya maintained the same pace and intensity she had started with. More importantly, Maya's ability to adapt mid-fight allowed her to counter every adjustment Sarah's corner suggested. The end came in the third round when Maya executed a combination she had been practicing with Lisa, Park. She feinted a low kick to draw Sarah's guard down, then immediately followed with a jumping knee strike that landed flush on her opponent's solar plexus. Sarah dropped to the mat and couldn't continue, giving Maya her first major tournament victory by knockout. The win over Sarah Mitchell sent shockwaves through the junior martial arts community. Maya had just defeated the defending regional champion in decisive fashion, and she had done it with a technique that demonstrated both creativity and perfect timing. Tournament officials began discussing whether she should be moved up in the seedings for future events. Maya's second fight was against a wrestler from Louisiana who had been cross-training in striking arts for 2 years. The stylistic matchup presented completely different challenges than her first opponent. Where Sarah had been a traditional striker, this new opponent wanted to take the fight to the ground where her wrestling background would give her a significant advantage. The wrestling-based strategy initially gave Maya problems. She found herself defending takedown attempts and scrambling back to her feet repeatedly, expending energy that she would normally use for offensive combinations. Her opponent was strong, relentless, and willing to make the fight ugly if it meant securing a victory. But Maya's months of training with Lisa Park had prepared her for exactly this type of adversity. She remained calm under pressure, used her superior conditioning to outlast her opponent's initial surge, and began to time her defensive techniques perfectly. By the middle of the second round, she was sprawling out of takedown attempts and immediately countering with strikes that kept her opponent honest. The turning point came when Maya caught a poorly timed takedown attempt and turned it into a spectacular throw that sent her opponent crashing to the mat. The crowd erupted in appreciation for the technique, but Maya was already moving to capitalize on her advantage. She followed up with precise ground strikes that forced the referee to stop the contest, giving her a second tournament victory by technical knockout. Maya's success in Dallas earned her an automatic bid to the state championship and established her as one of the favorites to win her division. But it also brought pressures and expectations that she had never experienced before. Martial arts magazines wanted interviews, college scouts were requesting training videos, and other fighters were studying her techniques to develop specific strategies for defeating her. The most significant change, however, was in how people treated her at Dragon's Den. The students who had once seen her as an interesting novelty now viewed her with genuine respect and, in some cases, intimidation. Even the black belts acknowledged her skill level and sought her input on techniques and training methods. Jake noticed the shift in dynamics immediately. Fame can be more dangerous than anonymity, he warned Maya after a training session where several newer students had seemed afraid to spar with her seriously. When people start treating you like you're special, it's easy to start believing your own hype. Master Chen echoed this concern in his own way. Empty cup can be filled with knowledge, he told her during one of their private training sessions. Full cup has no room for improvement. Always remember that you are student first, champion second. Maya took these warnings seriously, but she also couldn't help but feel pride in how far she had come. Less than 18 months ago, she had been a complete beginner, who most people assumed would quit after a few weeks. Now she was being mentioned in the same conversations as nationally ranked fighters and being recruited by some of the top college programs in the country. The final months of preparation for the state championship became a delicate balance between maintaining her confidence and avoiding overconfidence. Maya trained harder than ever, but she also spent time studying video of potential opponents and working with sports psychologists who specialized in competition preparation. Lisa Park continued to serve as her primary training partner, but now their sessions focused as much on mental preparation as physical conditioning. They practiced scenarios where Maya would be behind on points, where she would be hurt, and where she would need to fight through adversity to win. The state championship isn't just about being the best fighter, Lisa explained during one of their final training sessions. It's about being the best fighter on that specific day, under those specific circumstances, with all the pressure and expectations that come with it. As the date of the state championship approached, Maya felt ready. Her technique was sharp, her conditioning was superior to anything she had ever achieved, and her confidence was at an all-time high. She had proven herself against increasingly difficult opponents and had developed the mental toughness necessary to compete at the highest levels. But she also understood that the state championship would be unlike anything she had experienced before. The competition would be fiercer, the pressure would be greater, and the margin for error would be smaller than ever. One bad performance could end her dreams of becoming a state champion and potentially affect her college opportunities. The girl who had once been laughed at for thinking she could learn to fight was now preparing to compete for the most prestigious title in junior martial arts. The journey had been longer and more difficult than she had ever imagined, but it had also been more rewarding than she had dared to hope. The state championship was just 2 weeks away, and Maya Rodriguez was ready to prove that she belonged among the elite fighters in Texas. The Texas State Championship was held at the Austin Convention Center, a massive facility that could accommodate the thousands of competitors, coaches, and spectators who descended on the capital city for the biggest martial arts event of the year. Maya had never competed in a venue this large or with this many people watching, and the scale of the event was both intimidating and exhilarating. The tournament format was unforgiving. Single elimination with no second chances. One bad performance, one moment of inattention, one perfectly timed technique from an opponent could end months of preparation in a matter of seconds. The pressure was unlike anything Maya had experienced, even during her most intense training sessions. Maya's first opponent was a girl from El Paso named Cristina Valdez, who had been training since she was 8 years old and had already won 2 regional championships. Cristina was known for her defensive style and her ability to frustrate aggressive opponents by making them overcommit to attacks that left them vulnerable to counters. The fight began with both girls feeling each other out, testing distance and timing while looking for patterns they could exploit. Cristina fought exactly as her reputation suggested, staying just out of range and making Maya chase her around the ring, while looking for opportunities to score with quick, safe techniques. For the first round, Cristina's strategy worked perfectly. She was winning on points while Maya was burning energy trying to close the distance and land meaningful strikes. Jake could be heard from the corner urging Maya to be patient and set up her attacks more carefully rather than rushing into Cristina's defensive traps. Between rounds, Master Chen's advice was simple and direct. She wants you to fight her fight. Make her fight your fight instead. Maya understood immediately what he meant. Instead of chasing Cristina around the ring, she needed to control the center and force her opponent to engage. Instead of throwing single techniques that could be easily avoided, she needed to throw combinations that would overwhelm Cristina's defensive positioning. The second round began with Maya implementing a completely different strategy. She moved to the center of the ring and stayed there, forcing Christina to either engage or risk being penalized for avoiding contact. When Christina did attack, Maya was ready with counters that turned the defensive exchanges into offensive opportunities. The turning point came when Christina attempted her favorite technique. A quick jab followed by an immediate retreat to safety. Instead of chasing her, Maya anticipated the retreat and caught her with a perfectly timed spinning heel kick as she was backing away. The technique landed cleanly on Christina's ribs and dropped her to one knee, giving Maya a standing 8 count and a decisive point advantage. Maya won the first round by unanimous decision, advancing to the quarterfinals and her first real test of the tournament. Her quarterfinal opponent was Angela Morrison from Dallas, a fighter Maya had heard about but never faced. Angela was bigger, stronger, and more experienced than anyone Maya had fought before. She was also the defending state champion, having won the previous year's tournament without losing a single round. The atmosphere in the arena changed noticeably when Angela's name was announced. She had a following among the spectators, and her entrance was met with cheers and applause that acknowledged her status as the tournament favorite. Maya's entrance, by comparison, was met with polite but uncertain applause from people who knew her reputation, but weren't sure what to expect. Angela's fighting style was aggressive and intimidating. She came forward constantly, throwing powerful combinations and using her size advantage to crowd her opponents against the ropes. Her technique was sound, her conditioning was excellent, and her confidence was absolute. The first round was a war. Angela came out like a woman possessed, throwing everything she had at Maya in an attempt to end the fight early. Maya found herself in survival mode, using every defensive technique she had ever learned to avoid the worst of Angela's assault, while looking for brief opportunities to counter. By the end of the first round, Maya was behind on points and visibly tired from the pace Angela had imposed. Her corner worked frantically during the brief rest period, Jake applying ice to her bruised ribs while Master Chen offered strategic advice. "She is trying to intimidate you," Master Chen said, his voice calm despite the intensity of the situation. "But intimidation only works if you allow it to work. You have tools she does not have. Use them." The second round began with Maya implementing a strategy she had never used in competition before. Instead of trying to match Angela's aggression, she used her superior footwork and timing to make Angela miss badly, then immediately countered with precise techniques that scored points while avoiding extended exchanges. The crowd began to appreciate what they were witnessing. Maya was putting on a clinic in defensive movement and counterattacking, making the defending champion look clumsy and predictable. Angela's frustration was becoming visible as her powerful attacks repeatedly hit nothing but air while Maya's counters found their mark consistently. The third round belonged entirely to Maya. Angela's early aggression had taken its toll on her conditioning, and she was noticeably slower than she had been in the first round. Maya sensed the change immediately and began to press her advantage, throwing combinations and maintaining pressure that forced Angela to fight defensively for the first time in the contest. When the final bell rang, there was no doubt about the outcome. Maya had not only defeated the defending champion, she had done it convincingly, winning the last 2 rounds by wide margins. The crowd gave both fighters a standing ovation, but everyone present understood they had just witnessed the emergence of a new champion. Maya's semifinal opponent was Rebecca Kim from Houston, a technically perfect fighter who had never been knocked down in competition. Rebecca fought like a machine, throwing textbook techniques with mechanical precision and rarely making the kinds of mistakes that Maya had learned to exploit. Against other opponents, the stylistic matchup was fascinating to experienced observers. Rebecca represented the traditional approach to martial arts: perfect form, disciplined strategy, and conservative tactics designed to accumulate points safely. Maya represented the newer approach: creative combinations, aggressive pressure, and a willingness to take calculated risks for spectacular finishes. The fight was competitive throughout, with both girls having moments of success. Rebecca's technical superiority was evident, but Maya's conditioning and creativity allowed her to stay close on the scorecards, while looking for the one opening that could change everything. That opening came in the final 30 seconds of the third round. Rebecca, confident that she was ahead on points, became slightly more defensive as she tried to protect her lead. Maya recognized the shift in tactics immediately and launched a desperate but perfectly executed combination that caught Rebecca completely off guard. The finishing sequence was a thing of beauty, a feinted low kick that drew Rebecca's guard down, followed immediately by a jumping knee strike that lifted her off her feet, followed by a spinning heel kick as she fell that connected with her solar plexus and dropped her to the mat unconscious. The arena erupted in chaos. Maya had just knocked out the most technically sound fighter in the tournament, with a combination that most people had never seen attempted in competition, let alone executed successfully. The referee didn't even need to count. Rebecca was completely unconscious and required medical attention before she could leave the ring. Maya found herself in the championship final, facing an opponent she had never heard of, Jennifer Walsh from San Antonio. Jennifer had quietly advanced through her bracket without attracting much attention, defeating solid but unspectacular opponents with workmanlike performances that impressed judges but didn't excite crowds. But Maya's research revealed that Jennifer was potentially her most dangerous opponent yet. She was a southpaw with excellent defensive instincts, superior wrestling skills, and the kind of grinding, relentless style that could wear down even the most conditioned opponents. More concerning, she had watched all of Maya's previous fights and would be prepared for everything Maya might attempt. The championship final was scheduled for the next evening, giving Maya almost 24 hours to prepare for the most important fight of her life. Everything she had worked for over the past 18 months would be decided in 3 rounds that would last a total of 9 minutes. As Maya lay in her hotel room that night, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the first day she had walked into Dragon's Den, when everyone had assumed she would quit within a few weeks. She thought about the countless hours of training, the moments when her body had wanted to give up, and the people who had believed in her when she had trouble believing in herself. Tomorrow night, she would have the opportunity to prove that size and strength were less important than heart and determination. She would have the chance to show that the quiet girl who had been underestimated her entire life was capable of achieving greatness when given the opportunity to prove herself. The championship final was less than 24 hours away, and Maya Rodriguez was ready to fight for her dreams. The championship final was held on the main stage of the Austin Convention Center, with bleachers packed to capacity and the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Maya had never fought in front of so many people, and the noise level was unlike anything she had experienced. Camera crews from several sports networks were positioned around the ring, and she could see college scouts with notebooks and video cameras in the front rows. As Maya made her way to the ring, she spotted her parents in the crowd. Her father was wearing a Dragon's Den t-shirt and looked nervous but proud. Her mother was clutching a small Mexican flag and appeared to be saying a prayer. The sight of them gave Maya a surge of emotion and determination that helped calm her pre-fight nerves. Jennifer Walsh entered the arena to a smaller but enthusiastic group of supporters from San Antonio. She looked relaxed and confident, moving with the easy grace of someone who had been in this situation before. Her pre-fight routine was methodical and precise, suggesting a fighter who left nothing to chance and had prepared for every possible scenario. The pre-fight introductions felt surreal to Maya. When the announcer called her name and listed her accomplishments, she could hardly believe he was talking about her. 18 months ago, she had been a complete unknown. Now she was being introduced as one of the top junior martial artists in Texas, with a record that included victories over several nationally ranked opponents. The referee called both fighters to the center of the ring for final instructions. As Maya looked into Jennifer's eyes, she saw the same calm confidence she had encountered in all her previous opponents. But she also saw something else: respect. Jennifer understood that Maya had earned her place in this final through skill and determination, not luck or favorable matchups. The opening bell rang, and Maya immediately discovered that her opponent was everything the scouting reports had suggested. Jennifer was technically sound, physically strong, and possessed the kind of ring intelligence that came only from years of high-level competition. She controlled distance expertly, making it difficult for Maya to establish her preferred range, and her counterpunching was precise and powerful. For the first 2 minutes of the opening round, Maya found herself fighting exactly the kind of tactical battle that favored her opponent. Jennifer was content to win exchanges by small margins, accumulating points steadily while avoiding the kind of dramatic exchanges that might give Maya an opportunity to land fight-changing techniques. But Maya's training with Lisa Park had prepared her for exactly this scenario. Instead of becoming frustrated by Jennifer's conservative approach, she remained patient and began to implement the game plan she and Jake had developed specifically for this type of opponent. The key was to make Jennifer engage more aggressively than she wanted to. Maya began to control the center of the ring more assertively, cutting off angles and forcing Jennifer to either stand and trade or risk being penalized for avoiding contact. When Jennifer did engage, Maya was ready with combinations that turned brief exchanges into extended ones. The breakthrough came midway through the first round. Jennifer threw a technically perfect jab-cross combination, but Maya slipped both punches and immediately responded with a devastating uppercut that caught her opponent completely off guard. Jennifer's legs buckled, and for a moment it appeared the fight might end right there. But Jennifer's experience showed as she managed to tie up Maya in a clinch, buying herself time to recover while the referee separated them. The knockdown had given Maya a commanding lead in the first round, but Jennifer's ability to survive the follow-up attack demonstrated that she would not be easily finished. The second round began with Jennifer fighting with new urgency. She had been hurt and was behind on the scorecards, which meant she needed to take more risks if she hoped to win the championship. Her increased aggression played directly into Maya's strengths, giving her the kind of dynamic exchanges she thrived in. Maya's conditioning advantage became apparent as the round progressed. Jennifer was throwing harder and more frequently than usual, and the increased pace was taking its toll on her energy reserves. Maya, meanwhile, seemed to get stronger as the fight continued, maintaining the same speed and power she had started with, while Jennifer began to show subtle signs of fatigue. The most significant moment of the second round came when Jennifer attempted a takedown, hoping to use her wrestling background to control Maya on the ground. But Maya's takedown defense had improved dramatically during her training, and she not only stuffed the attempt but immediately countered with a knee strike that landed flush on Jennifer's ribs. The technique was perfectly executed and perfectly timed, catching Jennifer as she was shooting forward and unable to defend herself. The impact lifted her off her feet and sent her crashing to the canvas in obvious pain. The referee began counting, but Jennifer managed to get back to her feet at the count of 7, though she was clearly hurt. Maya pressed her advantage immediately, throwing combinations that kept Jennifer on the defensive for the remainder of the round. When the bell rang to end the second round, Maya was ahead by a significant margin on all 3 judges' scorecards. Between rounds, Master Chen's advice was simple: fight smart. You are winning. Make her take all the risks. Jake's counsel was more specific. She's hurt and she's tired. If you stay technical and don't get careless, this fight is yours. The third round began with Jennifer fighting like a woman with nothing to lose. She came forward with desperate aggression, throwing everything she had in an attempt to land the knockout blow that would save her championship. Her combinations were powerful and creative, and for the first minute of the round, Maya found herself in serious trouble. A perfectly timed overhand right from Jennifer caught Maya flush on the jaw and dropped her to one knee. The crowd erupted as the referee began counting, and for a moment it appeared that Jennifer had found the dramatic comeback she needed. But Maya's mental toughness showed as she cleared her head quickly and got back to her feet at the count of 4. She had been hurt, but she wasn't seriously damaged, and her conditioning allowed her to weather Jennifer's desperate follow-up assault. As Jennifer began to tire from her all-out attack, Maya began to reassert control of the fight. Her movement became more fluid, her counters more precise, and her combinations more varied. She was fighting with the confidence of someone who knew victory was within reach, but also with the discipline to not take unnecessary risks. The end came with 90 seconds remaining in the final round. Jennifer, exhausted from her comeback attempt, dropped her guard slightly after throwing a combination that missed its target. Maya stepped forward and launched the same spinning heel kick that had finished several of her previous opponents. The technique was picture perfect, catching Jennifer squarely in the solar plexus and folding her over like she had been hit by a truck. She dropped to the canvas and couldn't continue, giving Maya the victory by knockout with just over a minute remaining in the championship final. The arena erupted in chaos as Maya was declared the new Texas state champion. She had done something that most people had considered impossible 18 months earlier. A complete beginner had worked her way to the top of the junior martial arts world through dedication, skill, and an unshakable belief in herself. As Master Chen and Jake entered the ring to congratulate her, Maya felt overwhelmed by emotion. She had proven that heart and determination could overcome any physical disadvantage, that technique and intelligence were more important than size and strength, and that dreams could become reality for those willing to work for them. The award ceremony was a blur of cameras, interviews, and congratulations from competitors and coaches throughout the martial arts community. Maya was presented with a championship belt, a scholarship to the college of her choice, and recognition as the outstanding junior martial artist in Texas. But the moment that meant the most to her came when she saw Jake Morrison approaching the stage. The same instructor who had once questioned whether she belonged in a martial arts academy was now beaming with pride as he watched his student receive the highest honor in junior competition. "I owe you an apology," Jake said quietly as he handed her a small gift box. "I never thought anyone could accomplish what you've done. You've taught me that the size of the fighter matters far less than the size of the fight in the fighter." Inside the box was a small medal engraved with the words "Instructor's Choice Outstanding Student." It was the most meaningful award Maya had ever received because it represented the respect and recognition of someone who had watched her transform from a complete beginner into a state champion. As Maya stood on the podium with her championship belt, looking out at the crowd of supporters who had watched her unlikely journey, she thought about all the people who had laughed at the idea that she could learn to fight. She thought about the skeptics who had questioned whether she belonged in a martial arts academy, the opponents who had underestimated her because of her size, and the critics who had suggested she was too small to compete at the highest levels. None of them were laughing anymore. Maya Rodriguez had proven that determination and skill could overcome any obstacle, that dreams were achievable for those willing to work for them, and that the quiet girl who had been underestimated her entire life was capable of greatness when given the opportunity to prove herself. The championship belt around her waist was proof that sometimes the biggest surprises come in the smallest packages, and that the most unlikely champions are often the ones who inspire others to believe that anything is possible.